My mom actually went to Hopkins. So my parents had this idea that I should go to Hopkins since I was in early in high school. So they'd always been pushing me to go to Hopkins, but you know how it is. You're like, no, Mom, thanks. But I wound up coming to visit my junior year, but I was still like, no thanks, bye. But, they were still pushing it. Anyhow, so, finally regular decision came around.
I can imagine that conversation, too. I love your parents.
They're
my
so parents
funny.
So regular decision came around, and of my many character flaws, indecision is it's way up there. Anyhow, so I was deciding at the end between Hopkins and Cornell, which is, great school. But I went up to visit Cornell, I think 2 or 3 times. My poor father drove me. We live in Philadelphia. My poor father drove me up there, all of these times to visit, and hashed over all these minute details that don't matter at all. And then finally, I still couldn't decide between the two, both great schools. So I went to mail my letter.
So you flipped a coin?
I actually flipped a coin.
Did you really?
I flipped a coin, and
I said, God, that was a guess.
I actually flipped a coin.
Oh my gosh!
I remember I'm standing in the big post office in downtown Philadelphia, and I'm like, okay, I guess I'm going to Cornell. So I I sent my deposit into Cornell. I'd come downtown with both letters, and then I go home and I'm like, Mom, Dad, I'm going to Cornell, and they're like, okay. And then the next day, I'm like, not feeling great. And then the next morning I wake up and I'm like, Mom, I made a mistake. I'm going to Hopkins. And she's like, well, apparently not, because you already said no. So I called Hopkins and I said, I made this big mistake. I really want to go to Hopkins. I decided it's the right school for me. And they said, well, I think we've over-enrolled. We're really sorry. And I said, no, you don't understand. I have to go to Hopkins. So my mom, who was just this fabulous go-getter woman, was like, "Okay, we're going to Hopkins right now." So we get on the train.
I never heard this story before.
I come down to Baltimore.
Oh my God.
I have to meet with Dean Ladding, who's the dean of admissions. Bless his heart. And he's like, again, I'm really sorry, but I think we're over-enrolled. I'll look at it. I'll see what we can do, but we're gonna have to put you on the waiting list. We'll get back to you. Anyhow, so I leave campus. I'm heartbroken. I'm crying on the train. And 15 minutes later, my mom's cell phone rings. And they're like, you know what? We'll make an exception. We'll see you next fall. Anyhow, so I wound up starting Hopkins. And it was great. I had a fabulous time. But Dean Ladding, to this day, sees me and just starts laughing.